Good afternoon, fourth grade. Today we're going to continue reading in our American Revolution text. First, we have a quick write. It states, describe a time when someone made a decision without asking you. How did you feel and what happened? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. Our focus question for today is, how did taxation without representation affect the American colonies? Our vocabulary words are tax. That's when you have to pay money to the government when you buy things or when you make money. And so this picture would be an example of tax. The second word is represent. That's when you pick someone to speak on your behalf. And so we have representatives of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, Hillary and Donald Trump. And then number 3 is import. That's when you get other countries to bring their products to your country and sell them. That would be import. Draw a line to each picture from the vocabulary word and then turn the page. And remember, as we are reading, before we get started, we're going to turn the title into a how or why question so that we can find the main idea. And we're going to do this with all nonfiction texts. You turn the title into a how or why question, and that answer that you find when you're reading is going to be your main idea. And so our title is Taxation Without Representation. And so we would turn that into a how question. And in box 1, we would write down, how did taxation without representation affect the American colonists? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to read. And we're going to begin reading, and then we're going to underline our answer to that question, and that's going to be our main idea. It says, in the 1760s, the British Parliament created acts that forced the colonies to pay tax on imports, such as sugar and tea. Since colonies did not elect representatives to Parliament, many Americans proclaimed that taxation without representation was illegal. Angry colonists refused to import British goods until the acts were lifted. In 1768, 4,000 redcoats occupied Boston to punish the city for its resistance. Then in 1770, they fired on a rowdy mob. This is called the Boston Massacre. 3 years later, anti-Parliament leader Samuel Adams organized men to board a ship and dump its tea cargo into the Boston harbor. And so when we're thinking back to how did taxation without representation affect the American colonies, we know in this first sentence that if Parliament, the British government, forced the colonists to pay taxes on imports, and the colonists had not voted on this tax. They did not get a say in whether or not they wanted to pay the tax. And that is what is meant by taxation without representation. So for our main idea in box 1, we would write down taxation without representation affected the American colonists by forcing them to pay taxes when they did not have an opportunity to vote against the taxes. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the next question. 2A says, why did the colonists think taxation without representation was illegal? And if we go back in our text, it says the colonists did not elect representatives to Parliament. And that is why they proclaimed that it was illegal, because they were supposed to vote on whether or not they wanted to pay taxes. So in 2A, you would write, the colonists thought taxation without representation was illegal because the colonists did not have any elected representatives. Therefore, no one was voting against the taxes. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for 2B. It says, what do these details reveal about the British Parliament? And so if the British Parliament made the colonists pay money without giving them their right to vote, which was illegal. And so we would say that in 2B, these details reveal that the British Parliament was treating the colonists unfairly because they gave other British citizens representation and not the colonists. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for 3A. It says, how did the colonists respond to the unfair acts of the British Parliament? And if we go back in our text, it says the angry colonists refused to import British goods until the acts were lifted. So they would not let ships from other countries that had things they could buy on them, they would not let them into the harbor so that they couldn't sell the goods, which means the colonists didn't have to pay the taxes. So in 3A, we would write, the colonists responded to the unfair acts from the British Parliament by being angry and refusing to buy British goods. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for 3B. It says, what were the consequences of the colonists' actions? So we're thinking, what happened to the colonists because they wouldn't buy these British goods? And it says, in 1868, 4,000 redcoats occupied Boston to punish the city for its resistance. It also says that the British fired into a rowdy mob and killed people, killed American colonists. And so in 3B, we would write down, Great Britain punished the colonists by sending more British soldiers to the colonies. And British soldiers in the colonies fired into an angry crowd, killing 5 colonists. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for box 4. It says, how did the colonists respond to the Boston Massacre? And if we read the next sentence, it says, 3 years later, Samuel Adams organized men to board a ship and dump tea into the harbor. So that tea was from another country, and they dumped it into the harbor so that it could not be sold. It was dumped into the water and ruined. So in 4A, we would write, the colonists responded to the Boston Massacre by dumping British tea into the Boston harbor. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for 4B. It says, what do these actions reveal about the colonists? And this lets they're refusing to buy British goods, and they're dumping the goods into the ocean so that it can't be sold. And this lets me know that they are rebellious and they take up for themselves when they're treated unfairly. So in box 4B, you would write down, these actions reveal that the colonists are rebellious, but they also take up for themselves when people treat them unfairly. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. It says, how did taxation without representation affect the American colonists? And you can finish that sentence with the main idea, and then you can talk about examples that support your answer.